expecting other people to share their secrets, their market wizardry, their price chart alchemy. They really didn't do it. They really didn't deliver any of that. They just talked about what everybody else talked about. And I was expecting someone to do a better job on spinning the retail stuff that everybody sees. And every time, every single time, a new book, a new course, a new something or other, it would be the same boring bullshit. Wouldn't get anything new from it at all. And then I started pursuing my own studies. And I started thinking to myself, okay, and think about this as I ask you this question. If you've never thought about it, think about it right now. If there really were market wizards, traders that were able to do things that were just a cut above everything else that you'd seen before, something just really separates what they do from everything else, what would it look like? Well, I got to thinking when I was coming up, like a superpower. My sons, when they were growing up, and my youngest still, he's a little bit slower than the average person. I mentioned he was harmed by a vaccine when he was born. And while he's not terribly slow, he's noticeably slower than the rest of my kids. Bright child, very artistic, very creative, but he's slower academically. And sometimes he still talks to me like a little kid. And he'll ask me, he'll say, Dad, if you could be a superhero, what superpowers would you pick? It's almost like he forgets that he asks me this question. Every 3 or 4 months, he'll ask it, and I'll tell him, something different, because I know he's asked the question before, but I want to treat it like it's a new conversation and a new opportunity to broaden his opinion about what it is that we're talking about. So because of that conversation with my youngest son, it made me think about this tonight and how I came up learning these things, developing these things, being inspired by how these markets really book price, and really taking a step away from what everybody else and what I was introduced to, like everybody else is. You read the same stuff. Everybody looks at the same thing, the same books, the same strategies, the trend lines, and all that stuff. And there are people out there that make money with that. Absolutely. But my opinion, and this is simply my opinion, it may differ with you, and you may not agree with what I'm about to say, but just because someone makes a lot of money, I don't really think that makes them a market wizard. It makes them an extremely profitable trader. Absolutely, that's skill. That is absolute skill. There's no denying that. But I don't really see that as a market wizard. To me, that conjures up ideas of precision, accuracy, foresight, higher strike rate than the average trader, knowing not to go into areas where it's not likely to do well, where other traders that are extremely profitable, they'll take more losses because they're comfortable with taking losses, and they're comfortable with coming out of drawdown. Whereas, in my opinion, a market wizard would be abstaining from that and knowing when not to do those things. So when I was a younger man, I made a list of things that I wanted to really focus on. One of them, obviously, I mentioned this many times in passing. And if you're a new listener, I'll just toss it in here because you may not have heard it yet, but you probably will if you go through all the stuff that's on my YouTube channel. But one of the first mentors to me, and I've never met this man, so please don't bother him like other people have done. But Larry Williams, I purchased everything that man put out when I was a younger guy. Whatever he did, I bought it. If he had an article that he did, Wherever he did anything, I got it. He was like he was like my Babe Ruth, you know. He was like my Rocky Marciano, my Muhammad Ali. He was the person that I aspired to be like. I wanted to be like him, not in the sense that everybody looked up to him because he took 10,000 to 1.2 million dollars in a year, but because he had tools that I felt were market wizardry. What tools am I talking about? Mostly what he has written in his book, How I Made $1 Million Trading Commodities Last Year. It's a 1970s book, but 75% of that book is still relevant today. I don't subscribe to the lunar phases and all that bullshit, but all the other stuff, the chapters that he dubs his $1 million tools, they absolutely are exactly what they are titled. If you're a commodity trader, that stuff still works. Most of my understanding of what a mega trade is comes right out of that book. And what I've done is I've heard him in his lectures and his keynote speakings and everything that he's ever talked about and taught on. And wherever that man said he had a difficulty overcoming this, or he tried this, it didn't work for him, so therefore I used that. Well, if he couldn't do it, let me see if I can go in there and figure that out. Because I've always been a person that loved puzzles, jigsaw puzzles, crossword puzzles, word searches. That's how my mind thinks. I'm extremely analytical and I'm obsessive. So if I hear someone say they have a issue and I have an affinity for them, my whole point of doing it was I'm going to fix this problem for them and I'm going to share it with them. And they're going to appreciate me because I've done it. That was my 20-year-old mentality going into most of what I was trying to do as an initial trader, trying to figure out these puzzles. And one of his lectures, he mentioned how it was a short-term trading. I don't want to call it a workshop. He was standing up on like the stage and he was just talking to the traders and such, and kind of like an auditorium event. And it was on the topic of short-term trading. And he mentioned how he had no real understanding how to figure out how to buy at the low on bullish days. He would always buy on strength. Most of everything he did, all of his trading systems were buying on strength, buying on strength. If it opens below the previous day's low and it rallies up 20% of the previous day's range, he's buying strength. Well, that's, to me, that's chasing price. And that's why he has these really large stops, $2,500 per contract. That, to me, that's a lot. It's very forgiving when you are very confident that you think it's ultimately going to go a certain measure of handles or range. But I never felt comfortable with that. I tried very hard to use his mechanical systems and his rule-based ideas, and I couldn't make none of that work. It didn't fit with me. And to me, it highlighted this need to be a market wizard. I wanted to be what that title, Jack Swagger's book, I wanted to be that title in flesh. Now, I didn't